December 1st, The Guardian reported Daniel Farke's position as Leeds manager was at risk, demanding results in his next two affairs, up against the testing Chelsea and Liverpool. Even with that being quite the demands, the West Yorkshire side demolished Chelsea and more than matched Arne Slot's Liverpool. Daniel Farke has well and truly saved himself a trip to the job centre. No terminations, no logging into Indeed. The German lives to fight another day in his position as Leeds manager. Today's video will aim to detail just how he did so, what was initially going wrong, but what has so suddenly changed. Now, Daniel Farke has quite the mixed reputations from Leeds fans from what I've seen. A lot will have a fair amount of respect for him for his achievements last season, his recent form and the big game wins at Elland Road. But seemingly, there's always that element of doubt. There always seems to be that room for questioning whether that's poor performances this season or failure for promotion in his very first campaign. Outcrying criticism on Daniel Farke's name this season has been based on a few things. Now, I don't know if I can name absolutely everything. Funnily enough, different people share different level of critical thinking, but here's a few. Fan frustrations at Daniel Farke have encircled not playing to the strengths of the squad that they assembled, that being quite a big one. The dreadful away record with 1 win and 6 defeats. That one win coming against bottom of the table Wolves, who as we know haven't beaten a single team. Terrible defensive record, with only Burnley and West Ham conceding more. The underuse of last season's Players Player of the Year, Ounahi, and the overuse of 25-year-old American Brendan Aronson. There is more, but those are some of the key weak spots for Daniel Farke and Leeds this season, with that first one, as I reiterated, being quite a big one. Leeds in their recruitment strategy looks towards high physicality, height and athleticism above anything else, identifying that to survive in the Premier League, this is what you need. Signing players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Lucas Nmecha, Anton Stach, Sean Longstaff, Jacobillo heavily supports this, but also leans towards a direct style of play to go alongside the more intricate ball playing, so they have different tools depending on the team of which they are facing. A lot of teams in the Premier League are different. Any good manager at this level, especially trying to survive as a newly promoted team, needs to adapt, needs that pragmatism, needs to look at the opposition, their strengths, their weaknesses, and line up accordingly to nullify and disrupt that opponent. But not just line up, it is the way you play. Farke for quite some time didn't look towards this potential direct style of play. He had players in a squad built for him to be more direct, but kept insistently looking towards their 4-3-3 system to beat each and every opposition. Now, against some opponents like Everton, like Wolves, like West Ham, under those bright Elland Road lights as well, this will work. Teams where Leeds can set up a little more possession dominance, their squad and solid recruitment matches other opponents. But unfortunately, not every opposition is the same. In the first half against Manchester City, Farke set the team up like usual, away at the Etihad, and as you expect, Leeds were battered. Then at half-time, the pressure growing on his job status, he made a switch to a 5-3-2, and it's not simply the switch, the formation, how it looks, it's the intentions, it's the idea, it's how you attack and how you defend, all individually within your roles, but also as a collective in the effort. Credit to Johnny Cooper over on Twitter, but as we can gather here, since the half-time whistle at the Etihad was 2-0 down, we've seen an increase in long passes for Farke's sides. And then if we shift over to the top half of the tweet, 22.3% of Leeds' passes in their 3-1 thrashing of Chelsea were long, 5.5% higher than any match under Daniel Farke, showing that, funnily enough, playing to your squad's strengths with quality organisation off the ball and intention off it does work. Leeds this season, as we expect from their recruitment, have physically been a handful for the Premier League, ranking nice and high and average for all of these physical stats, making the switch to more direct play one that makes sense. Now, of course, you have to be careful with long balls because at the same time, you can lose it just as quick or quicker than playing it short. But if you back those long direct balls and that direct style of play with sharp duel winners, then you're going to do well and it's going to work. But of course, with the data with Leeds United, if we lift our eyes a little further upwards, the goals conceded is not a pretty picture, alongside the quality of chances they're conceding, providing a very dull viewing. So a switch to a 5-3-2 to give an extra body within the back line was needed, a little more security, and overall just a bit of a switch up to freshen up a bit. Now, many people are going to clap back at the direct and 5 of the back summary and think, well, didn't they switch to a back 4 and suddenly start battering Liverpool in the second half? Yes, they did, but of course against some teams, this style of play, this shape, this formation, this way of playing is going to work better than others. The 5 shape provided a lack of width, movement and intensity with the ball versus Liverpool, and slot side overall was handling the direct balls quite well. Dominic Calvert-Lewin versus Liverpool was great, but from the physical stats we can see he won just 2 duels out of 19, as opposed to the 11 out of 15 duels he won versus Chelsea. Simply, Liverpool centre-backs dealt with the direct balls a bit better, so the switch was needed as the long balls were getting nowhere. Farke being able to navigate between these styles of play is key for survival and maximising points from all of the games. If a team is weaker against physical strikers, you shift towards the 5-3-2 with Calvert-Lewin or Nemecha up front, or even both. But if the opposition, of course, is a little bit weaker in defending wide spaces, tend to get overwhelmed by wide overloads, then the 4-3-3 is necessary, of course. Now I'm going to analyse both systems, the 5-3-2, the 4-3-3, what it does, what its aims are, but something else that is worth noting for Leeds United this season are the evening matches at Elland Road. These are the numbers for evening matchups under the lights at Elland Road, under that devastating hostile atmosphere. 73 shots, 9 goals conceded and 15 shots average per 90. That is quite a lot for a newly promoted team. 11 big chances too, and then physically and defensively they've been much stronger as they concede less goals, concede less chances and set up quite aggressively. Farke wants his side to be aggressive, but one of the reasons his well-organised pressing off the ball works so well at home is the atmosphere. It's an extra push for the players, so the players can feed off the noise and simply match the intensity of the noise and the atmosphere within the stadium. Now, of course, you can fall into the danger of being a little bit too reliant on this, but if Farke's side stay consistent in these matches, they'll win a lot more points, single-handedly with the push of Elland Road. The schedule as of this moment before any fixtures are rescheduled has Leeds playing Sunderland and Burnley at home now until the end of the season. Both of them at 8 PM kickoffs. Both of them are teams who went up with them last season. That could very well be 6 points. But the 5-3-2 is a very well coached 5-3-2. So how about we have a look at that? Now within this tactics board displayed for you just here, we can see Leeds United in their 5-3-2. I will analyse the 4-3-3 just after, but first we're looking about the 5-3-2 and its intentions on the ball. Those intentions on the ball were very clear against Liverpool and Chelsea, of course. But what was so interesting about them on the ball is just how direct it was. Daniel Farke went from not being direct really at all to being quite very direct, a little bit route one. But most of the build-up, it was very simple. There was nothing massively intricate about it. It all started with the goalkeeper, Perry. Perry would take one touch with the ball to compose himself, to assure himself, and then the second touch was to launch the ball within this designated area. Now this designated area is filled with Leeds United players. As you can see, it is a complete overload. Simply, Leeds United players were shifting over to one side of the pitch so that Perry could aim it towards this side of the pitch and Leeds could overwhelm the opposition in physicality, overwhelm the opposition in their recruitment strategy after all, as it's all physical, it's all duel winners, it's all second balls, loose balls. They're there to be won for the likes of Ampadu, Stack, Calvert-Lewin, Nemecha, so many of these players. Now this created a little bit of a separation between the midfield and the defence because there's that little bit of a gap between the two. But most of the balls were aimed towards Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Lucas Nemecha, who was on the pitch as well. The launch balls were very accurate, but they didn't need to be massively accurate. Even if the Liverpool defender or Chelsea defender won the header, if it was a simple knockdown, then Leeds United could get to the ball, because the likes of Gruev, the likes of Ampadu, the likes of Stack was so sharp onto the ball. It was very direct, but it was very effective, and I have to say I like this very much. It was a bit old school and it worked so well. And I think what I love about it is that the emphasis doesn't just stop with the direct long ball from the goalkeeper. I mean, the defenders would play a long ball as well, but it's the fact that players would shift across. The players were shifting across from throw-ins from deep as well, from deep on the pitch, to overwhelm Liverpool, to consume more Liverpool numbers and create space elsewhere for the likes of Jayden Bogle or Goodmanson, whoever was free and isolated on the other side of the pitch. But it was such an effective method, especially against Chelsea, of just completely overwhelming and exposing the lack of duel winners and sharpness to the opposition. It was organised, it was chaotic for the opposition, but to note, it was their whole recruitment strategy in the summer. If we take a look at this 5-2-5-3-2, not 5-2-3, off the ball, this is what it looked like within the high press when Liverpool, when Chelsea were trying to play out. As you can see, a clear 3 at the back shape where the 3 defenders stay back but don't stay too tight to their man, but at the same time they have a little bit of a starting distance. So if the ball was to come into Szoboszlai, there'd be a little bit of a rival for the defender so that he comes in with more intensity. As you can see for the wing backs, when the ball would funnel down to Kerkez, who was playing, not Robertson, Bogle would arrive with extreme intensity, and that's where they were so effective. They were pinning the likes of Chelsea and even Liverpool in as well. Whenever the ball would come to Gravenberch, that's when Ampadu would jump towards him. It was full of energy, and the best thing about it is that it would force a team out wide. It actually shivered away from the fact that there's gaps to exploit within the 3. When you see the 3 here, immediately for the opposition, you're going to look to pull apart this opposition. You're going to think Szoboszlai, take care of Gruev, and then you can create space for the likes of Wirtz here, and maybe you'd find little passes punch through the lines where you could find the space within the half spaces, particularly high up. But the strikers and the wing backs to some extent would look to curve their runs so that they are forced to go out wide, exactly where Leeds want them, exactly where Leeds dealt with them. But of course, Leeds United weren't operating so high up all the time. They had to sit deep and consume a lot of pressure. Now this is Liverpool in their attempts off the ball, and they did a pretty good job in the first half of keeping them quiet. And I thought what was really impressive about all of this was the proactivity in wide spaces. When the ball was over to Conor Bradley or Estevao in the Chelsea game, you'd have Goodmanson and you'd have Gruev across 2v1s in attempts to force them back. If you're looking for an underlapping run into these spaces, you're either tracked by Gruev, the wide midfielder of the 3, or the centre backs. As the centre backs, it made it a lot easier for them to defend within these spaces because it was a 3 at the back, a 5 at the back. There is an extra body. I've highlighted this space because this space is where a lot of balls were simply just cleared away. If they tried to punch between the lines, you had the likes of Bijou, you had the likes of Roden, Ampadu, who were doing such a good job of sharply getting towards the ball and defending with that real intensity, but real old schoolness of just getting it away. And that's where Leeds United could escape, because you have the 2 just here. They were pretty deep, but at the same time they could be outlets in transition where they could run quite a bit up the pitch. Now the man-to-man coordination was quite sophisticated from deep. When the ball would funnel out wide, if you're looking towards Milos Kerkez, that's when Stack would jump towards him. He would shift the man, and that's how the 3 shifts across, so there's no gaps. Ampadu would shift across the Wirtz, and of course Gruev would shift across a little bit more. So this meant that Leeds were covering every single player with good organisation and good energy. Just because you're sitting off in a tricky shape, that isn't all the work done. You need to do quite a bit more work. So this just forced the opposition backwards and trying to funnel it back over to this side, where again the shape would shift across again, and you'd see Stack move back to verse. Stack was probably the counter to this quite a lot of the time, because whenever Kirk has moved into this position, he'd move, and Ampadu, with his organisation, with his overall alertness, I can't quite get that word out, it did a very good job. 2v1s out wide, eventually it just forced the opposition to bang, cross the ball into the box. Leeds United, aerially, fantastic team. They're going to win those aerial duels. So this overall was a very, very tricky shape. But of course, this 5-3-2 isn't going to work against absolutely every team in the league. So this is why you have a plan B or a plan A for Daniel Farke's case, because this is the system he used. And it worked fantastically. I did an analysis in Everton versus Leeds, the first game of the season, on Leeds' system and just how good it was, and it was all about the wide overloads. Now of course this isn't the shape all the time in possession. I'm just demonstrating the fact that when the ball is on each flank, when the ball is on each side, these are the wide overloads. And against Liverpool, this switch just completely overwhelmed them, because overall Konate had a very dodgy game, but Konate and Van Dijk, they were dealing with the long direct balls towards Calvert-Lewin fairly well. There were a few moments in the first half, a few hairy moments for Liverpool, but overall they did a decent job. But what they didn't do a very good job on was defending these wide spaces. Conor Bradley and the Liverpool left side was completely overwhelmed by these wide overloads. The fact that 3 to 4 players are always consistently shifting across, it made it so easy for Leeds United to play through. I mean, it's just a simple bang, bang, bang. It really works that simple. Football is not that simple. It's not a case of me just dragging, the ball across different players and dragging players around. It's about the intention and the fluidity, the relationships. But Daniel Farke has a lot of relationships on the pitch in these wide spaces. It's the exact same for the opposing flank. It just allows them to play through. If the winger commits forward, it's just a simple cycle of passes. It worked so well, and it was as easy as that. It worked just as good as that. It was brilliant to watch. It made final third entries into the box so easy. And of course, when Leeds United get into the box, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, though he's not the most clinical player in the world, everybody knew this before he signed for Leeds, he does create chaos in the box. He does create chances with his movements, with the crosses into the box. He is a guy to aim for, and when the ball was down this side, it was Stack crashing the box, Aronson in the box, Bogle was pretty far forwards as well. So Leeds did a very good job of finding a solution to break this Liverpool team down. They did it with excellence. It quite simply took Liverpool and Arne Slot by surprise. It created so many chances, and chances overall for Leeds United this season haven't been that difficult for them to create. If you have a look at the stats so far this season, then you'll see the numbers are quite average, but pretty good for a newly promoted team. The big overall takeaway though is that Leeds just aren't very clinical. They create chances, but they don't quite take them. And I think you could see that from the very first game against Everton. They were creating chances, they were bullying Everton. Everton could hardly escape their first half in the first half for the first 45. That's a lot of first halves. But simply they could not escape, but Leeds will not punish them because they weren't clinical. They needed a penalty in the end. And overall, it shouldn't have taken a penalty to beat Everton. But if Leeds could be a little bit more clinical, take their chances, grow more confidence in goal, then I think Daniel Farke's setup and flexibility in their setups could be quite deadly, could brush teams off, and Leeds United could very well stay in the Premier League. The 5 simply offers a little bit more security if you're not feeling so brave, and if you want to press a team with a little bit more security and cover behind you, whilst the 4-3-3, it offers these amazing, intricate, wide overloads that can overwhelm an opposition, and it's the sort of setup that you're going to see if you can dominate the ball. Leeds United are playing Brentford away on Sunday. I'd be pretty surprised if you see the 5 at the back against Brentford, because this is the sort of game you'd expect Daniel Farke to incorporate a 4-3-3. a game where Leeds can take control. Thank you for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, feel free to smash a like and subscribe to the channel. Do you think Leeds United will stay up this season? I think I probably asked this question at the start of the season as well, but it's been about 15, 13, 14, I don't know how many games since, so I'm asking it again. Do you think they'll stay up? I think it's between probably them and West Ham. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.